Have you ever wondered, or are you wondering right now, if someone is cheating on you? God, is what I'm feeling just anxiety that comes from my past, or is it... Have you ever been in a relationship where everything felt like a guessing game, where you're constantly wondering if they're into you? Second, guessing whether a text means what you think it means, walking on eggshells because you're afraid of scaring them away. We've all been there. And in those moments, it's easy to confuse intensity with intimacy, passion with presence. But emotionally available love isn't about chasing highs. It's about feeling safe, feeling seen, and knowing that the love you're receiving is consistent, not conditional. When someone is emotionally available, love doesn't feel like a puzzle, it feels like peace. You see, emotionally available love doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean there aren't disagreements or moments of vulnerability. In fact, vulnerability is a hallmark of emotional availability. It's the ability to show up even when it's hard. It's saying, "I'm scared," or "I don't know how to fix this," without running away. Emotionally available people take emotional risks, not just romantic ones. They lean in when conversations get tough. They're not looking for perfection, they're looking for connection, and they understand that true intimacy grows not in the highs, but in the honest, everyday moments. One of the biggest misconceptions people have about emotionally available love is that it's boring. They're so used to drama, inconsistency, and emotional chaos that when someone actually shows up with sincerity and steadiness, it feels unfamiliar. But let me tell you something, love that feels like a safe harbor isn't boring, it's brave. Because it takes courage to be emotionally honest. It takes strength to be vulnerable again after being hurt. And when someone chooses to love you with clarity, presence, and consistency, that's not boring. That's rare. When you're with someone who's emotionally available, they don't just listen to your words, they hear your heart. They don't wait for you to beg for attention. They anticipate your needs, not because they're perfect, but because they're present. They ask how you are, not out of politeness, but because they genuinely want to know. They remember the little things. They don't disappear when life gets hard. They stay. They show up, even on the days when love doesn't feel like butterflies but like effort. That's what real love does. It shows up. Emotionally available love doesn't fear your emotions. It doesn't shrink away when you cry, get frustrated, or feel overwhelmed. It holds space. It says, "I may not have the solution, but I'm here with you." It validates your experience rather than defending its own ego. It doesn't gaslight or dismiss. It understands that love is not about fixing someone. It's about standing with them as they face their own storms. You don't need to hide parts of yourself. In fact, the more honest you are, the more connected you become. If you find yourself constantly questioning your worth in a relationship, ask yourself this: are you being loved? Or are you being tolerated? Emotionally available love doesn't make you earn affection. It doesn't punish you with silence. It doesn't weaponize withdrawal. It makes you feel emotionally nourished, not emotionally starved. You don't feel like you're too much. You feel like you're just enough. And that's because people who are emotionally available have done the work. They know what they want, and they're not afraid of the closeness that comes with it. There's a calmness to emotionally available love. It's not always loud. It doesn't always come in grand gestures, but it's deeply grounded. It's the kind of love that says, "I'm here," without needing to shout. You don't have to chase it because it's not running. You don't have to guess because it's clear. You don't have to beg because it's generous. And over time, you realize something powerful, that the love you once thought you had to earn was never love at all. It was just someone's unavailability disguised as mystery. Sometimes we mistake emotional unavailability for excitement. We think they're just guarded, or they'll open up eventually. And we stay, hoping that love will be enough to change them. But the truth is, love doesn't make someone emotionally available. Healing does, willingness does, courage does. And unless someone chooses to face themselves, no amount of love from you will make them ready. Emotionally available people aren't perfect, but they are present. And they're not afraid of being seen, flaws and all. When someone is emotionally available, they don't just show up when it's convenient, they show up when it counts. They don't ghost you when life gets busy. They don't become a stranger when things feel hard. They keep showing up, not because they have to, but because they want to. Because you matter. And when someone values you, they make you feel valued. You become a priority, not an afterthought. They don't need to be reminded to treat you well. It's in their nature to do so. It's important to understand that emotionally available love is built, not stumbled upon. It's cultivated through trust, communication, and time. It requires you to be emotionally available too, to open yourself, to communicate your needs, to show up with your truth. It's not a one-way street, but when two people choose to be real, present, and emotionally open, that's where true connection is born. And from that place, love becomes not just something you feel, but something you build moment by moment. Emotionally available love communicates, not just through words, but through actions. It doesn't leave you in the dark. It doesn't make you guess where you stand. It offers clarity. It's in the way someone calls you back, follows through on their word, checks in when you're quiet, and speaks up when something's off. It's in the little things that say, "I'm thinking of you." The effort may not always be perfect, but it's consistent. Because when someone's emotionally invested, they don't disappear when it's inconvenient. They lean in, even when it's hard. When you're with someone who is emotionally present, you'll notice something powerful. You feel more like yourself. You're not performing. You're not walking on eggshells or editing your emotions. You feel safe to be authentic, to be messy, to be human. Because emotionally available love invites the whole of you, not just the parts that are easy to love. It says, bring your joy, your fears, your questions. I want all of it. You don't feel judged for being emotional. You feel embraced for being real. So many of us have been taught to settle for breadcrumbs. We've been told to be patient with someone's inconsistency, to be understanding of their inability to show up. But emotional availability is not about tolerating neglect in the name of empathy. It's about two people who are equally willing to show up for one another, who choose each other, not just when it's fun or exciting, but when it's vulnerable, when it's uncomfortable, when it matters most. That's what separates real love from emotional limbo. An emotionally available person doesn't fear intimacy. They welcome it. That doesn't mean they're not afraid of getting hurt, but they don't let that fear control them. They're willing to risk vulnerability for the chance at connection. They're not guarded with their affection or cryptic with their intentions. They're clear, they're kind, and they're consistent. Because they understand that love is not a game. It's not about keeping score. It's about building something honest and meaningful, even if it means facing uncomfortable truths along the way. In emotionally available love, disagreement doesn't mean disconnection. You can argue, disagree, even hurt each other with words, but there's always a return. There's repair. There's reflection. Emotionally available people don't abandon you in moments of tension. They don't weaponize silence. Instead, they're willing to talk it through. They apologize when they're wrong. They listen when you speak. They take responsibility not just for their actions, but for the emotional impact of those actions. That's the difference. That's what emotional maturity looks like. You'll notice that emotionally available love doesn't rush. It's not desperate to seal the deal or fast forward into fantasy. It moves at a pace that feels safe and grounded. It takes the time to know you, not just your body, but your values, your dreams, your wounds. It's curious, not possessive, patient, not pushy. It allows love to grow organically rather than forcing it into a timeline. And in that space, you're given the freedom to breathe, to unfold, to discover who you are in the presence of someone who truly sees you. Here's something else you'll recognize in emotionally available love alignment. Your goals, your values, your emotional languages, they don't have to be identical, but they're compatible. There's effort to understand each other, to grow together, not apart. Emotionally available partners want to know what matters to you. They respect your boundaries. They don't try to change you. They support you. And when life throws challenges your way, you're not alone. You face it as a team. That kind of love doesn't pull away. It pulls you closer. Emotionally available love shows up in hard moments. When you're grieving, when you're overwhelmed, when you're lost in your own thoughts and need someone to help bring you back. It doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It doesn't need you to always be strong. It just needs you to be honest, to let it in. And when you do, you'll see something beautiful. It meets you where you are, not where it wishes you'd be. It doesn't try to rescue you. It simply stands beside you. That's what real partnership looks like. You might be wondering, how do I attract this kind of love? And the truth is, it begins with being emotionally available to yourself. Are you honest about what you feel? Are you brave enough to ask for what you need? Do you make space for your own healing, or do you fill every silence with distraction? Emotionally available love starts from within, because when you show up with emotional honesty and self-respect, you naturally filter out the people who aren't ready to meet you there. You stop settling, you start choosing. And when two emotionally available people meet, something extraordinary happens. They create a space where both people are allowed to be whole. You don't complete each other, you complement each other. You don't hide your wounds, you heal in each other's presence. And love becomes a journey of shared growth, not constant repair. It becomes a conversation, not a guessing game. A dance, not a chase. And in that kind of love, you don't lose yourself. You finally find a place where all parts of you are welcome. Emotionally available love doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't make you feel like you're too sensitive, too intense, or too emotional. Instead, it welcomes your depth. It honors your feelings. It sees your capacity to love not as a burden, but as a gift. Because emotionally available people aren't intimidated by your emotional landscape. They're curious about it. They want to understand your heart, your triggers, your dreams. And when you speak your truth, they don't flinch. They listen, they lean in. Because that's what emotionally available love does. It holds space. In emotionally available love, there's emotional attunement. Your partner doesn't have to be a mind reader, but they do pay attention. They notice when your energy shifts. They ask questions instead of making assumptions. They respond instead of react. They don't take your vulnerability as weakness, and they don't use your openness against you. Emotional safety becomes the foundation of the relationship. Not just chemistry, not just attraction, but deep, reliable safety. You don't have to hide, you don't have to armor up. You're allowed to simply be. There's also something deeply attractive about someone who's emotionally present. They make you feel calm. When you're with them, you're not on edge. You're not anxiously checking your phone, second-guessing your worth, or wondering where you stand. You feel chosen. You feel prioritized. And that emotional calm allows your nervous system to relax. For the first time, love feels like rest, not tension, peace, not performance. And you begin to understand that true attraction isn't just chemistry. It's emotional resonance. One of the clearest signs of emotional availability is how someone responds to your needs. Not just in the beginning, when everything feels new and exciting, but when it requires effort. Emotionally available people don't shame you for needing reassurance. They don't make you feel weak for wanting more connection. They meet your needs with kindness. And when they can't, they communicate honestly. There's no manipulation, no guilt tripping, just clarity. You're not punished for needing love. You're loved for being human. Emotionally available love means presence, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. They're with you. When you talk, they're not half scrolling through their phone. When you cry, they're not shutting down. When you celebrate, they're cheering with you. Presence doesn't mean perfection, it means intention. Emotionally available people may not always get it right, but they try. They keep showing up. They keep learning. Because love, to them, isn't just about feelings, it's about action. Follow through. Consistency. In relationships with emotionally unavailable people, we often feel like we have to earn love. We shape, shift, we prove, we wait. But in emotionally available love, there's no proving, there's receiving, there's no performing, there's sharing. You're not walking on a tightrope, you're grounded, because love isn't something you win. It's something you share. And when two people are emotionally available, love becomes mutual, reciprocated. Real, you give and you receive. You speak and you're heard. You show up and you're met. If you've never experienced emotionally available love, it can feel foreign at first. You may even sabotage it. You might mistake stability for disinterest. You might crave the adrenaline of drama. But over time, you begin to realize that chaos isn't love. Emotional roller coasters aren't romance, they're trauma reenactments. And once you've healed enough to recognize what true emotional availability looks like, you'll never again settle for inconsistency. You'll stop chasing closure. You'll start choosing clarity. Emotionally available love doesn't play power games. There's no who cares less wins mentality. Instead, both people care deeply. They're honest about their feelings. They say, "I miss you," without shame. They say, "I'm scared," without pretending. And because of that honesty, the relationship grows. Vulnerability becomes the glue. There's a softness, a sweetness, even in difficult moments. Because love isn't about control, it's about connection. And when connection is prioritized over ego, everything changes. You may notice that emotionally available people aren't perfect communicators, but they're honest communicators. They're willing to try. They say things like, "I'm not sure how to express this, but I want to." Or, "I'm still working on this, but I care." That effort matters. Because emotional availability isn't about always saying the right thing. It's about being willing to show up, even when the words aren't perfect. You feel their presence, their intention, and that's more powerful than any perfectly crafted line. Finally, emotionally available love allows you to grow. It doesn't freeze you in a role or keep you stuck in old patterns. It encourages your evolution. It supports your goals. It sees your potential. You don't feel like you have to dim your light to be loved. You shine brighter because of the love. It nurtures your confidence. It respects your individuality. And while you walk together, you're still allowed to be fully yourself, because in emotionally available love, your growth doesn't threaten the relationship, it strengthens it. Emotionally available love is steady. It doesn't vanish when you need it most. It doesn't give you just enough to stay hopeful, only to pull away when things get real. It's not love that makes you question your sanity or your self-worth. It's a love that shows up even when it's inconvenient. It doesn't retreat into silence. It communicates, even clumsily, because the connection matters more than comfort. It's not the absence of fear, it's the presence of courage. It's someone choosing you with their actions, not just their words. You see, emotionally available people are willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. They don't ghost because things got too deep. They don't go silent because you expressed a boundary. Instead, they lean into those moments. Not perfectly, but with presence. And that's what makes all the difference. Emotional availability isn't about always knowing the right thing to say. It's about having the willingness to stay in the moment, to stay in the connection, to stay with you, even when it's tough. There's something liberating about being loved by someone who isn't afraid of your past. Emotionally available love doesn't expect you to come perfect and unscarred. It understands that you've been through things, and it honors that. It listens without judgment. It doesn't rush your healing. It says, "I see your past, but I'm here for your present and your future." You don't feel like your wounds are liabilities. Instead, they're honored as part of your story. And when love accepts your story, it helps you rewrite the next chapter with hope. Emotionally available love doesn't need constant testing. You're not setting emotional traps just to see if they care. You're not creating distance to see if they'll close the gap. Because you already know where you stand. There's no scoreboard, no tally of who's doing more. You both invest because you both value the connection. That's what makes it feel different. It's not transactional, it's mutual, not exhausting, but energizing. You leave conversations feeling understood, not depleted. And that becomes the new emotional standard. Another hallmark of emotionally available love is ownership. When someone messes up, they own it. They don't get defensive or flip it on you. They don't disappear when accountability is required. They acknowledge the harm. They repair the rupture. Not because they're trying to avoid consequences, but because your feelings matter to them. Emotional availability means emotional responsibility. They don't hide from the impact of their actions. They face it. Because they understand that love isn't just about intentions, it's about behavior. You'll also notice that emotionally available people don't just talk about boundaries, they respect them. They don't try to push past your limits. They don't manipulate or guilt you into saying yes when you mean no. Instead, they ask, they listen, they adjust. And because of that, trust grows. You feel like your no is safe, like your silence is heard, like your space is honored. And when someone respects your boundaries, it's not just about control, it's about care. It's about creating a space where both people feel empowered and safe. Emotionally available love makes you feel emotionally full. Not every second of every day, but consistently enough that your heart feels nourished. You don't feel like you're starving for attention or begging for scraps of affection. Love doesn't feel like a drought. It feels like rain. Steady, soothing, life-giving. And when you've lived in emotional deserts for so long, that kind of love might scare you at first. But over time, you learn to trust it, to receive it, to believe you're worthy of it, because you are. Emotionally available people aren't afraid to be seen in their moments of doubt. They don't pretend to be strong all the time. They don't armor up and act invincible. They say things like, "I'm feeling insecure today," or "I need some reassurance." And when they model that vulnerability, they give you permission to do the same. That creates emotional intimacy, a closeness built not on perfection, but on shared truth. You start to realize that real strength isn't about hiding emotion. It's about holding it together. One of the most beautiful things about emotionally available love is that it doesn't need constant drama to feel alive. It finds its aliveness in connection, not chaos. In presence, not unpredictability. The quiet moments feel just as rich as the passionate ones. A simple conversation, a shared laugh, a comforting silence. These become the heartbeat of the relationship. There's no need to create tension just to feel close, because closeness already exists. Love becomes less about adrenaline and more about alignment. And perhaps most powerfully, emotionally available love inspires you to become more emotionally available yourself. You start expressing more, not because you're trying to keep someone, but because you feel safe enough to be real. You stop hiding, stop performing, stop over-functioning just to feel worthy. You begin to trust that love doesn't require you to hustle for it, that you can simply be, and in that being, you are loved, fully, deeply. Consistently. That kind of love doesn't just change your relationships, it transforms your life. When you're with someone who is emotionally available, you stop needing to prove your worth. You're not anxiously trying to be more likable, more desirable, or more easygoing to avoid scaring them off. You can just be. You can speak without editing yourself. You can show emotion without fear of abandonment. And that's because emotionally available people don't punish you for being real. They reward it. They value authenticity over performance, vulnerability over perfection. That changes the entire dynamic. That kind of love makes you feel safe to exhale. One of the most overlooked gifts of emotionally available love is the sense of emotional predictability. You know how they'll respond, not in a robotic way, but in a stable, emotionally consistent way. If you're upset, they don't suddenly turn cold. If you're quiet, they don't assume the worst and shut down. Instead, they check in, they offer warmth, they offer presence. You stop walking through emotional minefields, you begin to trust the ground beneath you. And in that trust, love flourishes. Not through intensity, but through emotional reliability. In emotionally available love, independence is celebrated, not punished. You're not made to feel guilty for having your own passions or spending time with friends. Emotionally mature people don't view your autonomy as a threat, they see it as a strength. They want you to grow. They cheer you on. They respect your space. And you do the same for them. This isn't about being overly detached. It's about finding a rhythm where both connection and individuality coexist. You're partners, not prisoners. You support each other's wholeness. Something beautiful happens when two people feel emotionally safe in a relationship. They begin to heal, not because the other person is fixing them, but because the environment finally allows for the kind of growth that never felt possible before. You start to express emotions that were once buried. You grieve old versions of yourself. You learn to speak gently to the parts of you that were once shamed. And this happens because emotionally available love offers that rare thing: permission. Permission to feel, permission to evolve, permission to be. Emotionally available love doesn't disappear when you mess up. It doesn't make one mistake the reason for emotional withdrawal. That doesn't mean anything goes. Healthy boundaries still matter, but the love is anchored in compassion. It asks, what happened? Not, what's wrong with you? It doesn't reduce you to your worst moment. It sees your intention, your humanity, your capacity to grow. You're held accountable, yes, but never diminished. That kind of grace transforms how we see love. It becomes something safe to grow inside. One of the signs you're in emotionally available love is this: you don't feel the constant need to decode. You're not sitting with your friends analyzing texts or second guessing every conversation. You already know how they feel about you because they've shown you. Not once, not just in words, but in a steady rhythm of care. You don't feel like you're solving a mystery. You feel like you're building a bond. That emotional clarity gives your heart a place to rest. And from that rest, love grows deeper, more freely, more authentically. There's an incredible intimacy that comes from emotional availability, not just physical closeness, but a soul, deep connection. You talk about things that matter. You share your fears, your childhood stories, your insecurities, your hopes, and you're not met with judgment or discomfort. You're met with presence, with curiosity, with love. Emotionally available people want to know you, not just what you like, but what shaped you. And in that knowing, intimacy blooms. It becomes less about surfaces and more about substance. Emotionally available love gives you something precious, emotional freedom. You don't feel trapped in a performance or imprisoned by insecurity. You don't have to strategize your every move or suppress your true feelings to keep things peaceful. Instead, you're free to be honest, free to speak your truth, free to feel joy without fearing it will be taken away. You feel emotionally alive, not emotionally exhausted. That freedom is a sign of real love, the kind of love that doesn't control you but expands you. Another quality of emotionally available love is that it seeks to understand rather than defend. In conflict, they're not just listening to respond. They're listening to understand. They care more about why you're hurt than proving that they didn't mean to hurt you. That empathy shifts everything. It makes conflict a doorway to deeper connection rather than a threat to the relationship. Emotionally available people aren't looking to win. They're looking to repair. And because of that, even arguments can become moments of reconnection. And perhaps one of the most healing aspects of emotionally available love is this: it allows you to stop living in survival mode. When you're used to being on high alert, waiting for the next letdown, love that actually stays can feel unfamiliar. But slowly, your nervous system begins to recalibrate. You learn that you don't have to be constantly on. You learn to relax, to trust, to receive. Emotionally available love gives you that gift, the safety to step out of survival and into true emotional intimacy. And once you feel that, you'll never want to go back. Emotionally available love gives you roots. It anchors you in a sense of certainty, not because nothing will ever go wrong, but because you know you won't face things alone. You feel a deep, quiet confidence in the relationship. There's no need to constantly measure or monitor because the love is felt in 1,000 small ways, through a steady tone of voice, through a hand held during your lowest moments, through the choice to stay and work through the hard conversations. It's not just romance, it's reliability. That's what gives love staying power. You'll notice that emotionally available love isn't obsessed with the highs. It finds meaning in the everyday. It's the person who makes your coffee in the morning, the one who checks if you made it home safe, the one who remembers how you like your food, or senses when you've had a hard day. It's not always grand or dramatic, but it's meaningful, it's layered, it's rich. It's love that builds in the small moments. And over time, you realize those are the moments that matter most. That's where real love lives. Emotionally available people don't expect you to hide your triggers. They want to know them, not to avoid responsibility, but to love you better. They ask questions. They're curious about your inner world. They care how your past shaped you. They don't avoid your pain. They lean into it. They don't try to fix you, but they walk beside you while you heal. That kind of emotional presence is rare. And when you find it, you realize love doesn't just hold your hand when you're glowing. It stays when you're grieving. And that's when you know it's real. There's grace in emotionally available love. When you forget to communicate clearly, when you miss a cue, when you show up messy or overwhelmed. They don't instantly withdraw or punish you. They offer grace because they know love isn't just about receiving, it's about giving. It's about showing up for someone even when they're not at their best. Grace doesn't mean ignoring patterns or allowing disrespect, but it does mean choosing compassion in moments of imperfection. That grace is what deepens the bond beyond surface level connection. Emotionally available love isn't reactive, it's responsive. It doesn't knee-jerk into blame or silence. It pauses, it reflects, it speaks with intention. That doesn't mean it's always calm. Emotions are human, but there's a deeper emotional intelligence guiding the interaction. Emotionally available people aren't looking to win the argument. They're looking to restore connection. That kind of love values resolution more than revenge. It holds the bigger picture in mind. And because of that, the relationship becomes stronger with every challenge, not weaker. Another beautiful thing about emotionally available love is that it evolves. It doesn't get stuck in the honeymoon phase or fizzle when novelty fades. It adapts. It grows, it deepens, new seasons come and love shifts with them. You face hard times and love becomes more resilient. You reach new dreams and love becomes more celebratory. You change and love expands to meet who you're becoming. Emotionally available love doesn't resist change, it invites it. Because real love isn't static, it's alive and it keeps unfolding. And if you've ever wondered whether love like this is real, I want you to know it is. It exists. But it starts with you, with your emotional availability, with your healing, with your boundaries, with your courage to say, I will no longer settle for love that confuses me, starves me, or silences me. The moment you begin to show up as your whole self, you start attracting people who can meet you at that level. Love that's healthy doesn't begin with finding the right person. It begins with becoming ready to receive them. Because emotionally available love is a mirror. It reflects back your worth. It reminds you of who you are. It doesn't complete you, but it complements the wholeness you've worked so hard to build. When you speak, you're heard. When you hurt, you're held. When you rise, you're celebrated. And when you falter, you're supported. That kind of love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. It invites you to come home to yourself. And in doing so, you become more connected, not just to them, but to the truth of your own heart. So if you've been questioning whether you're asking for too much, let me tell you, you're not. Wanting consistency is not too much. Wanting honesty is not too much. Wanting someone who can emotionally show up for you is not too much. You are not too much. You're asking for what's healthy, what's whole, what's real. And the more you believe in your worth, the more you'll filter out the people who can't meet you there. Because emotionally available love doesn't run from your depth. It rises to meet it. And when you find it, when that love arrives, you'll know, not because it's perfect, but because it's present. Because it doesn't make you doubt yourself. Because it doesn't come and go with the wind. It grows roots. It earns your trust. It honors your heart. It challenges you to be better, but never asks you to be anyone other than yourself. And when you look back at all the moments you thought love was supposed to hurt, you'll be grateful you waited. Because this is what emotionally available love actually looks like.